Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We have our guest with us today. He's a brother we've interviewed once before. You go to my website, booktalkwithcorbin.com, and you'll see my prior interview with him. This is Mr. Daniel Greenfield. He is a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Amazing scholar, great scholar, but he has a lot on this whole Muslim terrorist organizations, national security. But he wrote an article recently where basically he was expressing concern about this whole woke, quote unquote, woke trend within the military and how that's having a negative impact on recruiting. And if there's a negative impact on recruiting, there's a negative impact on military readiness. Mr. Greenfield, I hope and pray that you are exaggerating when you say that there appears that the military leadership, they seem to be leaning more towards trying to show that they're these wonderful woke people, but they're not as maybe as committed to military readiness. How would you respond to that?
Unfortunately, a lot of the military brass are based out of Washington, D.C. They are very much focused on the cocktail party circuit. They're out of touch with the ordinary men and women in uniform. And very tragically, they're culturally out of touch. We see that Washington, D.C. is out of touch with the American people. The same is true of the Pentagon. And it is having a very negative impact on the recruiting environment. People are actually talking about this. Recruiters are saying that this is the worst recruiting environment since the Vietnam War. The numbers just are not there. And obviously, there is a challenging job market. There are labor shortages all over the place right now. We'll see what happens a year or two from now. But this is not in and of itself a new problem. Recruiting has been a problem for a while. It's now worse, but it's just this kind of perfect storm now with everything that's going on. But even before this, they've been trying harder. Most people don't realize just the insane amounts of money we just spend on ad campaigns for the military. The people, you pass the ad campaigns on the street. These are the products of massive contracts. There was a multi-billion-dollar contract signed by the Army recently with a massive ad agency, Omnicom, which also did work for the Biden campaign. Probably not a coincidence, but it's not unusual to have these huge $100, $300, $600 million contracts. And, it's a questionable to what extent these even work. But, the real problem here is not that you need a better ad campaign. So, we've seen some of the ridiculous woke ad campaigns. One had a lesbian wedding recently. They kind of try to do this anime theme. You're not, first of all, you're obviously not reaching the 18-year-olds that you want to reach. You're advertising this on television. That's not even working. But beyond that, you don't need a better ad campaign. You don't need to spend billions on ads. You need to focus on creating a culture, again, where people actually want to join and to serve. Because especially in this kind of labor market, people have so many options. Your economic situation, even in a place that's not exactly a thriving metropolis, is so much better than they used to be. Companies now are very starved for labor. They're hiring people. So, you have to compete. And what you're competing for is on values, is on the sense that you are engaging in a service to your country. And if you don't have that anymore, then what do you have left?
My uncle served in the military for 20 plus years, 25 plus years, actually. I don't know how he would have responded. I don't think he would have joined if they were putting out, we just say as an ad where they're a lesbian wedding or something like that.
Yeah, you had the lesbian wedding ad, you have other things, and it's the ads are not even the big issue. The real issue is culturally, is that there's the push to have people conform to whatever the latest political trend is, whatever the wokeness is. So now it's gender identity, now it's the transgender movement. Next week it could be something else. It's starting to turn the military into a college campus where every week there's a new outrage, there's a new indoctrination program, and none of it is about military readiness. Our military readiness is actually in a very poor place. We have been very lucky that we have not gotten into a war against a major power like Russia or China, because, there are plenty of experts, plenty of people who have, for that matter, have come out of the ranks who say that we are not ready for that kind of battle. The Air Force is not ready. The Navy is not ready. They have not actually been tested against a major power in quite a while. I know we can be thankful for that. But at the same time, a lot of the brass are able to engage in a lot of this nonsense. They focus on just getting money from Congress, doing whatever they think is going to appeal to Congress. And meanwhile, rank and file, we are not ready. And that is, if we are actually in a World War situation, if we are fighting China, Russia, the results will be very serious, because wokeness, as bad as it's exacting a price on people in the military who are just career people who are just heading for the exit, it's going to have a much more catastrophic price on the whole country if we are in a war and we are not ready for it.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Could you share some stats on? You said that military recruiting has gone down. Has been going down for several years, but recently it's really gotten pretty bad.
Yeah, so it's been described as the worst recruiting environment since the Vietnam War. The Army is at about 40%. Other services are doing somewhat better, but they are not up to spec. And the other thing that's also going on is you have the vaccine mandate that's been applied very inflexibly. As a result, the Army is going to hit the worst. They're likely to lose the most people if they actually start getting serious and pushing out everybody. If they actually, they've been doing the deadlines, they've been just doing pressure campaigns, but we are going to lose a whole lot of people doing that. And obviously, it's tragic for those people. It's tragic for our country because we are losing some of the best and brightest. Those people are going to find jobs. It's not an employment issue in this economy. What is really tragic is we are losing expertise. And, just going back to we were talking about when it comes to your uncle, there are so many military families that just automatically, instinctively expect my grandfather served, my father served, my uncle served, I am going to serve. And once that chain is broken, if that chain is broken for 5-10 years, that is enough. It's not going to be a case of my father served, I'm going to serve. That is going to be so much harder to rebuild once that happens. And that is why it is really urgent for a course correction, because, whatever happens, we don't have a major war in the next 5-10 years. Good, I certainly hope we don't. We are still going to have a huge gap there, because there are people, for that matter, who say, my family's military heritage goes back to the Revolutionary War, it goes back to the Civil War, it goes back to World War I, it goes back to World War II. What happens when so many of these people are telling me, I do not want my children to serve, I am not telling my children to serve? What happens in that next generation after that? It is something we're going to feel the effects of generationally 40 years from now.
Right. Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We're speaking with Mr. Daniel Greenfield. He's a Shillman fellow there at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Brother, we just got a couple of minutes left. Can you share with us the titles of some of the books or articles you've published?
Well, the David Horowitz Freedom Center has actually done a 2-part pamphlet about the state of wokeness in the military. One focused on the service branch leaders, which was about the destruction of the military by the Obama administration, by the Biden administration. The previous one really was about the defeat in Afghanistan and just how the military was focusing on politics, on racial politics, gender politics, identity politics, transgender politics. They were not focused on actually winning. And I'm not talking about obviously the people who are very much engaged there on the ground, but the leadership was not focused on it. And the Taliban were focused on winning. We were not focused on winning. There's a fundamental lesson here.
Wow. Brother, thank you so much. That's a great way to conclude. I hope that we'll be able to do this again sometime.
I would look forward to it. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, brother.